Psalm 10. Today is Earth Day 2020, so I decided to film this video outdoors, even though it's cold, a bit snowy, and not a very pleasant day. In fact, the contrast between the world as we wish it were, always sunny and warm, no smog or litter to degrade the air and the land, and the world as it actually is, that's part of today's theme. So let's dig into it. If you read the Psalms in sequence, it won't take long before you notice some jarring contrasts and contradictions. For example, Psalm 8 expresses amazement that this creature called Enosh, this mortal being, mankind, should receive such lavish attention and honor from the creator of the universe. How noble God has made us. But in the very next psalm we read, "Arise, Lord, let not Enosh triumph. Let not mortal man defy you." And then in Psalm 10, "Lord, you have to defend the fatherless so that Enosh will stop terrifying." This mortal human, Enosh, has gone rogue. He has become a god unto himself, exploiting the weak and vulnerable and laughing off any suggestion that God or anyone else is going to do anything about it. Now the psalmist is dumbfounded, not at God's amazing grace, but at God's apparent silence and lack of concern. After the orienting vision of Psalm 8, Psalm 9 and 10 are very disorienting. They raise disturbing questions about our view of God and how the world works. Psalm 10 asks, "God, why do you hide yourself in times of trouble?" And in verse 13, "Why can the wicked despise God and get away with it?" It's very disruptive to ask these questions, and even more stressful to not get a clear answer. But here is the genius of these psalms of darkness and disorientation. They are inspired by God to give us words to express our faith as well as our doubts, our fears, our anxieties when we experience a mismatch between the world we want and the way it is, between what God has promised He will do and the way things actually seem to go in the world. Psalm 10, for example, the poet does a case study of human beings who prey on their victims. Think sexual predators, drug lords, internet fraudsters, ruthless business people, human traffickers, schoolyard bullies. Our psalm says they are greedy, arrogant, and violent. They lie and ridicule. They are dismissive of God and a law unto themselves. They stalk and capture their victims and squeeze them without mercy. And instead of getting justice, these predators seem to prosper just fine. I don't enjoy reading this stuff. It doesn't exactly bring comfort to our souls, so we prefer to avoid psalms like this. But the fact is, there is so much evil out there in the world that it would be irresponsible if people of faith did not ask questions about it. So the poet lays out all this grim evidence of a world gone wrong, and he brings his complaint to God. "Arise, Lord, lift up your hand. Do not forget the helpless. Be the God you've told us that you are. Break the arm of the wicked man. Call the evildoer to account for his wickedness that would otherwise not be found out." This is a cry for God to redeem the world and set it to rights and demonstrate that God does see the plight of the afflicted. He does take notice of the grief of those who suffer. That God is the helper of the helpless, and that victims can commit themselves to Him. These psalms are bold expressions of faith because they are sung against the darkness. They express a faith-filled protest to God, asking why and how long. As laments, they are also prayers of intercession, shaped by a faith that shines through the questions. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations will perish from His land. And you, Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. You encourage them, and you listen to their cry, defending the fatherless and the oppressed, so that merely human mortals shall never again strike terror. This description of God helps godly people to know how we should respond to people in need, defending the helpless, listening to their cry, and encouraging them. Earth Day is primarily about taking action locally to care for the planet. Plant trees, clean up trash, etc. And it's a wonderful opportunity for a Christian to do these things as an act of worship to our Creator and Redeemer. But caring for the earth also extends to the most vulnerable human Brothers and sisters, that's putting Psalm 10 to work in very practical ways. Psalm 10 gives assurance to those who suffer that they are not suffering alone. They serve to anchor our faith in God, even while we wait for God's kingdom to come. So today, live in the tension of unanswered questions, confident that the Lord is King, both now and forever. Take care.